Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and this week, instead of the Not So Serious Keto video podcast, I will be bringing you part 3 of my interview with Chef Scott Guerin of Modernist Pantry. In this, our final portion of the interview, we get into the science of cooking and molecular gastronomy. So if you're into the science thing and kind of like to geek out on what's possible in the kitchen, this one is going to be one for you. We get into a number of different topics, including sometimes going too far down the rabbit hole and just seeing, can a recipe be done rather than should it be done? We talk a lot about how we think through recipes, and then we end talking about an ingredient that I think is going to be fairly big in some future recipes of mine, transglutaminase. Transglutaminase is a protein binder. Sometimes they call it moo glue or meat glue, but it is all natural. It's derived from milk, and what it does is it makes proteins stick together. And there are some pretty magical applications for that. But we'll talk about that in the interview. So here we go. One of the things, you'd brought up the Modernist cuisine bread collection.
Yeah.
And I'd mentioned before we started recording that I just gifted myself for Christmas the original Modernist cuisine box set. My gateway into Modernist cuisine or molecular gastronomy was Modernist cuisine at home. Yes. And I don't know how I stumbled onto that cookbook and why I thought at the time, just 10 years ago, that $140 for a cookbook made sense, but I bought it, and it's like, when people talk about how their world expanded the first time they took LSD or something, that's like what it was like. I went, wow, unbelievable. So have you, as a result of your job, had an opportunity to work with the folks at Modernist Cuisine, like Nathan Myhrvold, or the folks at Chef Steps, like Grant Crilly, or any of the other big molecular gastronomy personas?
Not them, and not anyone who's well known. I'm very close with the chef at Polyscience.
Okay.
So he and we text regularly. Bounce ideas off each other. He is, he's very, very intelligent. We did, the company had, dealings with Modernist Cuisine. We helped, I believe, promote the bread book and things like that. But never, obviously, in the past 2 years, nothing's going on. Just because no one's traveling.
Well, and you're on opposite coasts. You're in Maine, and I think those guys
too.
are all in like Seattle or San Francisco or something like that.
Different Portlands, right? Haven't had, we've definitely worked with them, but not face-to-face, not in the kitchen, nothing like that. But yeah, we've definitely done dealings with them. All of our stuff is still, I believe, linked on Chef Steps and that, so.
Yeah, anytime I get out onto Chef Steps and, they have an ingredient highlighted, it seems to me it takes me to your site.
Yeah. Yeah, we carry them, and we carry the smallest quantity, so that's the best, too, because nobody needs 50 pounds of xanthan gum, no matter what you're doing. I've never gone through 50 pounds of xanthan gum, that'll tell you, or even 10 pounds of it. You just don't need that much, so it's good to be able to have quantities as small as we carry them for anything, because, 50 grams could last you 2 to 5 years, depending on how you store it, right?
Yeah, and when you get into some of the ratios for some of these ingredients, you need a jewelry scale that's accurate to 1/100 of a gram.
Yeah, that's one thing I've dealt with a lot. Is just like I've gone through so many scales, just because I take them, I use them. They blow through batteries. They're also on the table all the time, so they either get bumped around or whatnot. It's like
probably looks like a meth lab or something with all your little scales.
Every time I open it, I wipe it out. It's just it's always covered in white powder. So yeah, it's it definitely gets all beat up on the inside. But yeah, I've measured ingredients as low as 1/100 of a gram to test something, just to see what I'm going to get from it. And obviously 1/100 of a gram is really low, but 1/10 of a gram works mostly for what we're doing. I think maybe only one ingredient really requires like to the 100th. So that's difficult when you're just a normal home cook. So.
Well, and anything that you're going to use like that, it goes back to what we talked about before. You're going to want to disperse it probably in some other dry ingredient. Yeah. Just so that, you don't get the one bite that has the whole 1/100 of a gram.
Exactly, yeah. So the one that I believe is the lowest that we have to use is potassium sorbate, which is a preservative, which doesn't add any flavor, doesn't add really any function other than that mold's not going to grow and that bacteria is not going to grow indefinitely. So yeah, it takes such a small amount. I believe even to like 128 ounces is only a half a teaspoon. So when it's scaled up that much, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, that's very rarely am I using that, and I don't think we'll ever make a video on it. So,
do you ever find yourself, you make a recipe almost to prove that it can be done, but you get done and you look at it and you realize you went down an incredible rabbit hole, and most humans out there, your viewers aren't going to go to this kind of effort. It became more of a proof of concept than a recipe.
Yeah.
And if so, can you tell me what it was?
It's really difficult, right? I've definitely tried things that I know I'm never going to use this, but I've tried them just to do it. And I've had these grand ideas to try them just to do it, just to see. I have one now that's very different that I'm trying to look at, but I do a lot of thinking before I do a lot of testing too. So that changes things. If I'm doing a lot of thinking, I definitely am looking at like, okay, can I use this in a video? Because that's always my first thought. I don't have much time to just test, right? Can I use this in a video? Probably not. Am I going to try this? That's the next question. Yeah, if it's short, if I can get it done in like a 20 minutes period, yeah, I think I could try this, right? I might have to actually look it up because I'm thinking, I don't have my notes on that. But there's something that I've been thinking of recently with spherification. And if I can find exactly what it is, I'd be able to tell you. Just because now I read the question earlier and then you brought it up and this came to mind. I'm thinking in my way of a different way of spherification for savory items. Have you done a lot of spherification?
Yes.
Yeah. So spherification.
And actually, right now, a very big thing in the keto community is these using spherification to make noodles, basically ramen or spaghetti.
Yeah. What is it? You basically just make, like, you squirt the noodles out.
Yeah.
Right?
You use a condiment bottle, and you have your batter, which includes the sodium alginate, and then you've got calcium lactate in the water bath, and you just get the water swirling, and you squeeze. And I did a version using canned chicken. So the noodles are, essentially carnivore. Your noodles are chicken.
A chicken noodle, yeah. I think we made one that was like a shirataki, so like a calcium hydroxide one. But what I want to do is I want to make so you've heard of frozen reverse spherification?
So is that where the thing you're spherifying, you use the calcium and you freeze it and then, into a shape, and then you drop it into a sodium alginate bath?
Yes. So one thing I find difficult with that is that depends on what you're trying to freeze. If it has too high of, let's say, it even could have alcohol content, if it had too high of salt content, whatever it is, sometimes that water doesn't freeze the best you want it to, and it can make for like, they look like little tails on the sphere and whatnot. But what I'm thinking of doing is adding gelatin and doing instead of frozen reverse, so like a gelatinized reverse spherification, to where I gelatinize something and I heat it up in water that is above 97 degrees Fahrenheit, which will then melt the gelatin. So you can have like this very rich, savory, whether it be like a demi-glace sauce or something, right, that can then pop. Or even, I was thinking hollandaise, but that's fat-based. So that even comes into like will this work? Can the calcium penetrate? Can the calcium, be prevalent enough? So if I can do that, that would be something completely different that I've never seen before. And that's one that's, like I said, I've done a lot of thinking on it. I haven't tested it yet, but I've definitely thought of, okay, this is exactly the way I'm going to go about it, just because I know these ingredients, I know spherification so well. Let's see, I think this is going to work, rather than just doing it just to do it, because that it's hard to bring my bosses something like, we're not going to use this.
I have thought along the same lines too. Just I think the presentation value of it is huge. You have a a fillet of tenderloin, and you've got like this little sphere on top, half circle, and you cut it, and it's almost like the sensation of when you cut open a poached egg in Eggs Benedict.
Yes.
And then just have the sauce run out. But the thing you run into, I think, is the temperature. You're putting this sphere on top of something hot, or at least fairly warm. Does that degrade the quality? I've only done I haven't. So back to your question, I haven't done savory. I've thought about savory. I made some appetizers back pre-keto where I took some Concord grape juice concentrate and only cut it by like a third, and then froze it into these half-sphere candy molds, and then did the reverse spherification thing. And then I took some peanut butter along with some tapioca maltodextrin to make peanut butter powder, and then basically made these PB&J shots. So you'd take it, and it would get into your mouth. The peanut butter powder would turn back into peanut butter. You'd press the sphere to the roof of your mouth with your tongue, and that would pop and become the jelly.
Big punch of flavor.
Fun little novelty.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing is like, now how do I take this and how do I make it in a video that's going to, hopefully sell product? That's the end game in all this. We are a business. Obviously, we want it to be the most educational it could possibly be. But the end game is going to be, will this sell? So yeah, there's a lot of things, and like I said, lots of thinking just to make sure, like, is this going to work? But yeah.
So is there a last question you'd like to ask me before we put a bow on this?
Yeah, I might have to pull them up real quick. I did ask quite a bit of them. Actually, I think I asked almost all of them that I really wanted to. So this could just be like one final one is like, with some of our ingredients, because this goes into, you use our ingredients, which is one that you find you have a lot of issues with, one that you've tried and maybe it just doesn't work the way you want it to?
I don't necessarily know that there's one that I have issues with specifically. I think what I have a challenge with sometimes is what I talked about very earlier when I asked you, like the paradox of choice. You're infinitely more familiar with the ingredients that you have, but I look at something like transglutaminase and I say, well, which one should I use?
Okay.
Do I use, there's 3 primary versions. I think there's maybe 4 in total.
4 in total, yeah.
But there's Mooglu comes in three varieties.
Yes.
And it's like, well, which one is the ideal one to use under which circumstances? I know that it seems like RM seems to be the easiest, I think, of the 3 to use. It's already got the is it calcium? What is it that's in there? Sodium caseinate, right?
Sodium caseinate.
That's in there. So you've already got that. Although I found that in some recipes, I may add additional to kind of strengthen its properties. But was it TS that you need to make into a slurry?
GS. So
GS.
RM can be used in a powder and a slurry, and it's transglutaminase and sodium caseinate. So TG, transglutaminase, doesn't require it, but it's helped out by another protein. So it's kind of like a liaison to help grab the proteins from the meat or whatever it is that you're trying to mix it up with, right? So the sodium caseinate does that. It has the glutamine and lysine. Then it reaches over and it grabs it from the meat, and boom, now you have that glued property. TI is actually vegan. So the transglutaminase comes from a plant source, and you can use it in plant-based proteins. So we found that it works in our faba bean protein. We tried it with a bunch of different protein isolates that we had, and the faba bean protein was awesome. It worked, and I've used it in things. I used it in my vegan chicken nuggets. But if I just put it straight on 2 pieces of meat and try and stick it together, it doesn't work as well as you would assume it would. It needs, that kind of broken down protein. Now, if you take that meat and you put a little bit of salt on it, those proteins will come up to the surface and it'll hydrate there. That works a little bit better. Then GS has to be made into a slurry because the GS has gelatin. So if you think of the G as gelatin and GS,
Okay.
that's where you go. So you have to make it into a slurry because you kind of have to hydrate that that gelatin to then, allow it to stick a little bit better. But the GS is great because you don't have to store it in the freezer. You can leave it out at room temperature, just like in a mason jar, right?
Okay.
So that, there's
I've got all mine in the freezer.
pros and cons, yeah. So if you do, it doesn't matter, right? It's not going to change anything. But that has to be made into a slurry, and then it can be added to whatever it is that you're making. So, yeah, that's one that we get a ton of questions about. We've done an episode on it, but it's like, okay, what do I buy? And then throw YG in there, which is a total wild card. It just gets added to dairy. It almost is like nothing like the other ones, but it's in the same family. So yeah, that's like a Activia product.
So which would be the best for making bacon wrapped scallops?
Oh, RM for sure.
Okay.
The thing about bacon wrapped scallops is that the bacon has so much fat on it that it's hard to get fat to stick. So one thing that I would suggest is like, or if you're using GS, it doesn't matter. It could be one or the other, is to, I like to get a little extra protein on the outside of the scallops and the bacon so that it almost like seeps in, and then you'll be able to get that fat to stick, because it's really difficult when you're just trying to stick fat on fat. It's really difficult. But if you take a little bit of gelatin and you literally brush it on there, like some hydrated gelatin that you've slightly melted, you brush it onto the fat on both sides, and then you stick it together, that fat will stick. So there's a lot of little tricks, especially with the bacon, because you don't want it to just be half stuck. You want it to be perfectly stuck, right? So yeah.
Otherwise, just use a toothpick.
Exactly, right? So like, I think one of our early recipes was like a bacon wrapped scallop roulade. Then we fried the whole thing.
You took the scallops and basically stacked them with transglutaminase to make a cylinder.
That's a really old recipe. Yeah, that's right. That was like 5 years ago. And just rolled it into a roulade, and then you were able to slice it to get like these perfect little lollipops. So basically, it can work that way too. You just have to make sure you hydrate it really well, or else you're going to get that separation. And like you said, just use a toothpick. If you want to do something a little, to the next level, you're going to have to do a little bit finer work, but it'll work.
All right, this has been a ton of fun, Scott.
Yeah.
I'm sure we just sit here and chat for a while, but we might start meandering a little bit more. Maybe if we give ourselves a month or two to come up with some more questions.
Yeah, I'd love it.
And if you send me that pizza picture, I'll make sure to include that. Do you know when that video is going to drop?
Ooh, is Cole here? Cole, when's the keto pizza coming out? I'll find out right now. He's pulling it up. It should be actually in February. We're about 8 weeks out right now, so if not more, because we just filmed a set last week. These 2 weeks we have off for Christmas break, and then we'll be back with new content in the new year. So yeah, I believe probably in February sometime.
I can't imagine being 8 weeks out. For me, it's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen the documentary 6 Days to Air. It's about South Park and how rapidly...
Oh, yeah, I have seen it, yep.
That's kind of what it's like on Serious Keto.
Down to the wire.
Yeah, everything's right down to the wire.
I mean, this is all we do. It's just me and Cole pretty much just hustling to get content done. That includes all of our Instagram videos and everything too. And now we're starting, YouTube Shorts and Reels as well. So it's a lot of content, but I think we're going to be just fine. And we've also, 4 years in of working together and making content. And this past year, we made sure to get ahead just because life's so much easier.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Yep. Well, I tell you what. Say hi to Janie for me.
I will.
And but let me. Hopefully, you can answer this honestly. Is she fun to work with? She seems pretty fun to work with.
Yeah, Janie's great. I do love Janie. She's awesome. She's actually a ton of fun on camera just because she's the boss, but I can still have fun and make jokes and all that kind of stuff. So yeah,
you can definitely see the chemistry between the two of you. It's a lot of fun to watch.
Great. Yeah.
So I'm going to put a bow on this. I will remind my viewers once again that I will include links both to The Modernist Pantry channel. It's not actually named Modernist Pantry, though, is it? It's got like
It's
a different
like
name.
Kitchen Alchemy at Modernist Pantry.
So,
Yeah, just to differentiate the YouTube
I will include a
channel from,
link
like,
to that and any videos that we discussed over the course of this particular episode. So
Which is
thank
about
you
a
very
million,
much, Scott. I look forward to doing this again.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thanks. I really enjoyed doing these interview videos. Unfortunately, it seems like they are my least popular videos. The ones that I did with Dennis from Black Tie Kitchen and the couple of previous ones that I did here with Chef Scott just didn't get all that many views. Kind of bums me out, but I think I'm still going to keep doing them from time to time. I've got a few people in mind, people that you like in the keto community, that I would love to do sort of this give and take interview with. So stay tuned for that, and I guess that's it. Thanks for watching.